So today's topic, hosted by myself and Josh and joined by our wonderful panelists, we are going to be talking about how to build winning client partnerships to secure those quality candidates. We'll be running for about 45 minutes today, and that'll be a mix of panel discussion and plenty of opportunity for questions from all of our wonderful attendees. So just to give you a quick whip round of who is attending today and who's hosting. So it's hosted by myself. I look after the marketing team at Hinterview, and my wonderful colleague Josh, who is our exec director and head of customer success. And they were joined by our wonderful panelists, Lisa Jones from Barclay Jones, Carl Bagshaw from ECS Group, James Osborne from TRN, and Gabby Fowler from Idem. They will be giving a short intro from themselves in a moment, but just in terms of an agenda, while everybody is joining from the waiting room, we're going to have a quick welcome from Josh for him, an opportunity for him to give some insight into what we're hearing from the market and all of the customers that we work with every day. Then, as I said, I'll do a quick whip round from the panelists, kind of a couple of minutes each, on where they're from and what they're hoping to bring to today's discussion. Then we're going to jump straight into some healthy debate and discussion about the topic of building client relationships and finding those all-important candidates. And then we'll have some opportunity, hopefully 5 to 10 minutes towards the end, to answer any questions. Please do drop your questions in the chat as we run through, and then we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. So without further ado, I will pass over to my colleague Josh just to set the scene for us today.
Yeah, Nelly, thank you very much. And yeah, thanks for everyone attending. Obviously, we'll be getting a recording of this sent around to attendees afterwards and be able to distribute that as well. This is actually the second in this series of kind of panel discussions that we've put together. And I thought it'd be good just to start off by giving a context as to why we want to do this. As part of Hinterview, I'm in a very privileged position to be able to speak with and hear from hundreds of recruiters on a monthly, daily, weekly basis, and really be able to gather some market insight into what people are seeing in terms of from the market, from their clients and their sectors, but also what strategies and what kind of tactics they're taking that are delivering results. And the last 2 years, we can all agree, it's been a very crazy and quite turbulent time. And really what stood out for us from client feedback over the last 3 months or so is where we're seeing the biggest drive in wins and success, and clients being able to say that they're engaging better, finding the right candidates and winning new business, has come from creating those more immersive client partnerships. And given the access that we have, putting together a panel of people like Carl, Lisa, Gabby, and James, who come from the rec tech background, come from the recruitment background, can bring to them some knowledge, will hopefully be able to give our attendees today some really good insight into how they can take some actionable things away that they can implement in their businesses and daily activity as of this afternoon, an hour from now. But to kind of give some context to this was something that I wanted to kind of highlight. The stat that really stood out to me at the start of this year was there was some research done by Rally Recruitment Marketing that showed that traditional job content is down 62% on engagement compared to Q1 of 2021. And actually, there's quite a trend of dropping engagement on job postings and other content like that across the board. And that's probably, a selection of things like, we're in a candidate-driven market. Candidates are more looking at selective application. They're choosing where to apply their things a bit more carefully, and they're a bit more resistant to that move. But there was an outlying statistic which said that storytelling content was up actually by 200%, really, really bucking that trend. And the way that they defined storytelling content was information when you're trying to attract candidates into a role, position, or to your company that goes beyond just the facts of a role. Something that tells you about the culture of the business, about the types of projects that someone might be working on, that gives you more insight to what it's like on a daily basis to work with or for that particular company. And that was what really was driving the candidates to apply and remain interested in that particular position. So that became a real cornerstone for us. How do we help our clients think about their storytelling strategy? And a lot of that, from the kind of conversations we had and engagement, we saw the wins in that came from building client partnerships to get deep into that kind of culture and information behind the businesses. But on the second stage of that, if we go on to the next slide, it was then tying that into this stat as well, which really showed you that in the UK, the average time to hire, there's a few stats around this, but circular within this kind of time range of 40 to 42 days. The average time to hire is 42 days. But the optimal engagement time for a candidate in a process is only 10 days. Now, obviously, this is broad across many sectors, it's broad across many areas, levels of seniority, but it boils down to a disparity between the average time it takes to take somebody through a process and the optimal time that person stays engaged with that company, with that role, with the process that you're putting them through. And how can we begin to bridge that gap? So I think the share might have stopped on the slide. Just the context, just the final context on that. How do we begin to bridge that gap between those two areas? It's collaborating with our clients to look at what that process looks like. What is their end-to-end drive for engaging a candidate to placing it? Can we verbalize that at the start of the process? Can we tell a candidate when they're deciding which role to apply for, how they're going to get from beginning to end of that process? And a lot of that for me comes down to client collaboration, building those winning partnerships to really lay that out from the offset. So whether you're a business joining us today who is, working with clients on a short-term basis, whether you're working on a long-term basis, moving your relationships with them from transactional to strategic and strengthening your understanding of their story and their process and using your expertise to be able to influence that will put you in a really strong position. And what I'm hoping that and I know that we'll really hear from the panelists today is things they've done to achieve this and things they will be able to give you to take away to be able to strengthen if it's something you're already doing. So that's a bit of context for it. Hopefully that sounds quite exciting. And at this point, I will hand over to the panelists. I believe Nelly has got some pre-questions that have come in from the attendees today already. But if you do have questions throughout this, please do post them in the chat. That's right, in the chat section, and we'll pick them up as we go through.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Josh. I think there's a lot of food for thought there and some interesting stats that I'm sure we'll be picking up on throughout the panel today. Before we jump into the questions, I think it'd be great just to do a bit of a round robin with our panelists, a quick introduction and kind of your kind of top level perspective of what you're hoping to kind of dig into in today's session. So if I, in no particular order, if I can come to you first, Carl, you're top left on my screen. If you give us a little intro, that would be great.
Sure. Well, I'm Carl Bagshaw from ECS Resource Group. We've been in business now over 30 years. I've been in the industry for 25 years. So I either love it or I'm slightly mad. Haven't decided which one yet. And I'm hopeful today to be able to give you some insights into automation and how we've been working with our clients to drive candidate attraction.
Absolutely. Automation, I'm sure, will be a hot topic for many of our attendees as well. So great that you'll be able to bring some perspective on that, Carl. Thank you. Next on my screen, Lisa, if you can give a quick intro, that'd be great.
Hi, it's Lisa from Barclay. So my team and I work with recruiters on their training to become more effective, on their technology to become more effective, and on their marketing to become more effective. And I'm really looking forward to kind of sharing some ideas about what we've done with our clients from a client, well, a 3Cs perspective, candidates, clients and candidates, colleagues, but obviously clients is the big deal today.
Amazing. Thank you, Lisa. Looking forward to hearing more on that. Gabby, you are next on my screen. If you're able to give us a quick intro, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Gabby. I'm from Idem Consulting. I'm the Group Operations Director, so I work really closely with our consultants and the wider team, solving a lot of headaches for our clients and kind of invigorating and change the way we do recruitment processes, which is what I'm looking forward to talking about today.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabby. And James, to come to you last.
Thank you, always last. James Osborne. I'm a non-exec director and advisor to a number of recruitment organisations, both in the UK and internationally. And I'm also the co-founder of the Recruitment Network, which is a large global community of recruitment business leaders around the world, all collaborating, supporting each other and helping each other maximise the opportunity that we're currently facing at the moment. And I suppose, what am I here to talk about today? I don't really know, actually, other than the fact I think this is a huge, huge opportunity for our industry to flip a whole load of things that were coming anyway. And I suppose what I want to share is some of those ideas of what recruiters and recruitment businesses can do quickly now to really capitalize on what I think is probably the most extraordinary time of our history in recruitment.
Absolutely, that's certainly what we're hearing from our customers in the market. It's a super exciting time. So just to jump into some straight into discussion, then I guess, James, if I could come back to you first, just to kick things off. From your perspective, what do we mean when we say a good recruiter client relationship? What do we think that actually looks like from your experience?
I think one of the issues with our industry for many, many years was that we have always been suppliers to our customer base. So the reality is recruitment organizations, recruiters are positioned below a customer. We bow down to our customers. We work for free for most of the year with the hope that we might make some fees at the end of it and that type of stuff. And the trouble with that is it just changes the relationship from a client point of view. So we get treated differently. The same way, if you host an event and it's free to attend, not many people turn up. If you host an event and you pay for it, people turn up. So, you know, putting a value to actually what we do and who we are is really, really important. So I think what's now happening, and COVID basically made this happen, it was sort of coming anyway, but COVID has expedited this, is the world has now said, actually, the competition is not between each recruiter and each other and us and etc. The competition is with the markets. And if you collaborate, and Josh used the word a couple of times, collaboration, he's absolutely spot on. If you collaborate with your customer base properly and they collaborate with you, then you can make a significant dent in some of these things that we're calling talent shortages, which I don't believe in, by the way. I think there's plenty of talent out there, but I think we're all doing the wrong things to try and find the talent. So for me, it's all about shifting the positioning from being a supplier to being a true partner, and our customers treating us accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that shift is something that we're certainly hearing about in our customer base. Carl, I don't know if I can come to you and kind of get your perspective on that. Do you kind of agree, disagree? Does that resonate with what James is saying?
Yeah, 100%. You know, it's IT certainly is where we focus, both perm and contract. And, you know, is there a talent shortage? Again, I probably have to agree with James, there isn't, but it's how we attract those candidates. There's so many means now of how you can engage with candidates, and hopefully I can give you an idea of how we work with clients for them to work with us, not be a supplier. Partnership is everything. Partnership, the word is used too often without any meaning, but we very much like to work with our clients as a true partner and get them involved in the process, because candidates aren't looking to move. Certainly if we look at the permanent market, you know, they're not willing to move for 500, £1,000 you know, extra in a salary anymore, because there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more uncertainty. So it's how do we attract the best candidates collectively in a true partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you kind of touched on that there, Carl, I wonder if you could give us a little bit more insight into how you're doing that currently. Yeah,
well, one of the options we look at is working with the hiring managers for them to use platforms such as Interview collectively, where we will ask the hiring manager to actually sell the opportunity, sell the client. The candidates want to, in my opinion, engage more via video than they do by your generic LinkedIn messages. You know, I get hundreds of messages a day via LinkedIn. Do I read most of them? No, because, you know, I'm not a fan of reading loads and loads of content, but if somebody sends me a video, then I'll definitely watch that. So what we're trying to do is get our hiring managers within our clients involved, and then use that as part of our candidate selection for the hiring manager to sell the opportunity and to get more of those passive candidates interested, so we can engage with them on a quicker basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, I can see you nodding. Is that something that you're hearing a lot in the market at the moment as well?
Yeah, I think both points actually pull together really well. You know, as James said, not putting that client on a pedestal where really you're just listening to what they're saying and what they want, and then just kind of going out and following that routine through. But actually, as an expert in the industry, being able to push back and say, well, actually, you know, we are in a competitive market for candidate attention, and how can we create collaboration in order to do that? And being able to actually influence the way that client thinks and get them out of maybe traditional ways of working, you have to feel you're on the same level of them, if not in certain aspects superior. This is our market, this is our industry. We know recruitment, they will know their sector, but we will know recruitment, and we have to be able to feel empowered to put those strategies in front of them. And then when you, as Carl said, I'm biased towards video, I come from Interview, it is what we kind of live and breathe, but the storytelling content be the forefront of that. The quickest way to get that in front of the candidates is absolutely collaborative content with your clients. So yes, I'm biased towards video, but I think we can expand that further towards what do the job posts look like? What are the kind of content they're putting in? Are you gathering the right information to answer the question of not just what is the job, but why is the job? What's the collective drive the company's putting forward? And if we can get deeper into that, that's where I think we really elevate our service into the next level. That's where we really get candidates impressed with what we're trying to put forward.
Nelly, can I just quickly touch on that super quick? There's two really clear ways, I think, of measuring what the level of your relationship is like with the customer. The first one is, are they willing to meet you in the boardroom, or do they want to meet you in a meeting room? So if you can get into the boardroom, you can influence decision making and forward planning. If you're in the meeting room, you're a supplier. So that's number one. And then number two, which I think is a super important thing, is if we don't deliver to our customers as a contingent recruitment supplier, which is how the industry has been significantly in the past, we don't get paid. We get penalized, right? What happens when a customer doesn't play their part in the relationship, doesn't get back to us on CVs, etc.? Are we penalizing our customers according to the service level agreements? And in many instances, we're not doing that, which is ridiculous. So we're willing to work for free. Our customers are letting us down in some instances, and they're sort of getting away with it. It doesn't seem like a very fair partnership. So the good recruitment organizations now are meeting in the boardrooms, and they're now putting in penalty clauses that if the customer doesn't deliver on their service level agreement, then there's penalty clauses in place. And I think that's absolutely right.
Following on from that, James, we're seeing that as well. You know, we're really focusing on our clients that are willing to listen to us. You know, we're informing them, as you said, Josh, we're an expert in this industry. You might be an expert in the role, but we actually know the recruitment industry. We know what's happening. We know the trends. We know the market. And we have clients now turning to us for that information. You know, they're asking us the questions, and we're helping them basically redo their recruitment process. And they're the clients that we're focusing on.
I think you can't be ashamed or scared to walk away from clients as well. You know, we are in the driving seat, so a good recruiter will know when to walk away from a client.
Great.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's something not to shy away from, and I think you've got to be kind of make those difficult decisions, but the ones that are the right decisions.
We have this really cool tool that we use called a CVI, Customer Value Index. It's like a scorecarding tool for clients, and we've got recruiters now to scorecard customers and then show the customers the score they gave them, and said, look, the reality is, based on our priority list, unfortunately, you're in the bottom quartile of our priority list. That's the reality. So I would love to work with you and put you at the top of my agenda, but I can't unless you change a couple of ways that you're working back with us. I think it's brilliant. It's exactly what it should be. It's not aggressive and it's not rude. It's just a reality of the market that we're in. If we want to solve these problems, the talent challenges, then we've got to do things like this.
Just being open and honest.
Yeah.
Just mentioned as well, I think one of our attendees, Sharon, just put a point in the Q&A talking about taking a kind of small deposit on roles up front to look at that commitment. And I think kind of tying to what James said there about, like, is the client meeting in the boardroom? Are they changing their processes, as Gabby alluded to? Kind of testing that level of commitment early on is a really good measure of how much they value your service and what they're looking to achieve with that. It's probably important, and I'll kind of move on to the next question very soon, but this doesn't also have to be an instantaneous role, like process. Like the clients you currently have who you don't have at that stage, you can move them in that direction. So whether you're proving your chops initially and showing them the quality that you have, and then laying out in your kind of timeline that the next role we work will look like this, and this is where you want to get to once we've made that. These can be progressional relationships and don't have to be an instantaneous in every case of a yes or a no. So even look at what you have in your current base and think, who have I proven my worth to, and who can I step into a new type of working relationship by demonstrating the previous value.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Go, Lisa.
I genuinely don't think recruiters take themselves seriously enough. I don't feel that they understand the value that they add. And as a result of that, when you start with that lack of respect for the impact that you're going to have on a business if you find them the right candidate, and if you find the candidate the right job, if you get that from the get-go and you straighten your back, and then everything you do demonstrates how seriously you are taking that, and reminding the candidate that they had a problem and that's why they came to you, and reminding the client that they had a problem and that's why they came to you, and making that quite explicit throughout the process, then you're less likely to get a counter offer. You're less likely to get a client taking way too long to make a judgment call. And the whole process runs a lot more smoothly. And then you can easily get away with doing what we used to do in the good old days of, does anyone remember a third? It seems like we've kind of like dropped the ball on how important it is, the stuff that we do. And I'm trying not to blow smoke in anyone's direction, but I genuinely have looked at the market and gone, it never used to be like this. We used to take ourselves very seriously. Anyway, that's my pep talk for
No,
the day.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's really interesting you say that. I mean, I definitely agree. I think we need to value ourselves a lot more than we do. Now, we always use this word subservient, where we're almost like apologetic for being in someone's presence, which is crazy. But to touch on Sharon and then Josh's reiteration of it, the piece around doing retainer, some form of retained fee, and I'm not convinced a third of a third of a third is still necessarily right in our industry, but I definitely agree with you, Lisa, in the sense that we need money up front to demonstrate that you're absolutely committed to this. The issue we've got, however, when we talk about us having value, one of the issues we've got, I have this conversation regularly with recruiters, is going, well, I get the concept of retained and having money up front. It sounds very sexy and very exciting. Everyone's talking about it. And then personally, for me, I think it's the absolutely right way of working. But you won't win business on a retained basis and deliver if you deliver a contingent level of service. And the issue we've got is we are winning retained business in many cases, delivering exactly the same contingent service that we would have done if it was on a contingent basis, and we wonder why it's not working. And this is where things like Hinterview absolutely play their part, because if I'm going to work with you on a contingent basis, I'm not going to give you the warts, and I'm not going to give you everything. We're going to do what I would normally do to make it work as much as I possibly can in this relationship. You want to take me seriously, you want to pay some money up front, 10%, 15%, whatever it is, I will engage with you properly, and I'm going to bring out all the big guns right now to make this work. So I'm going to bring in an interview and do a proper campaign to make that work. It's a different service level to contingent recruitment, and we've got to get that right. Otherwise, we're going to win retained business, get excited by it, and end up letting down a hell of a lot of customers and becoming really disengaged with the concept of retainers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, James. I think it's an interesting point to think of that kind of shift between, you know, what you're offering and actually what you're delivering. Gabby, I could see you nodding away there. Is there anything you want to chip in terms of what James has just covered?
Oh, look, I think it's, you know, one of the big projects we actually did, which I'll touch on later, is that, you know, we had a client come up to us with a very big problem. They wanted to grow their client services team by 60. And so it was a very big project, and we had to look at different ways of delivering this, because it was a very favorable client to us. And we ended up reaching out to Interview and came up with this process where we got our candidates really involved, and we shortened the process down. You know, we went from a 5-stage process down to a 2-stage process. And Josh, actually what you were saying before in the beginning about the optimal 10 days, we were getting offers out in 10 days. We were getting hire started within a month, and we grew the team actually by 70. So in the end, they saw more of a need, and we were able to really engage our candidates. And, you know, we talk about this all the time, about what our candidates feel during the process, and they felt supported. They also got valuable feedback. They also didn't feel dragged along for weeks. And in the end, you know, we had a client who was so on board with this way of hiring that we're now rolling it out to other projects that we're doing with them. Yes, we're not growing teams by 60, but more of the senior roles where they, you know, potentially are working on different time zones. That's also where a product like Interview is really useful for us.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Gabby. Lots more probably that we could talk on that, but just to shift slightly, I guess, onto another kind of hot topic that we're certainly hearing in the market, everyone's favorite buzzword, automation. But just to break it down into some into some real tangibles. Lisa, I'm going to come to you next, if that's okay. Thinking about automation specifically, how can we use that to improve building our relationships with clients and candidates?
The first thing you need to do with your automation, right, is to use it as and weaponize your time. That doesn't mean turning you into a robot. I'm a big fan of, you know, back in the good old days when we had more meetings with candidates and clients, really got into their DNA. That sounds a bit wrong, but had more time to actually do the thing that we've been talking about throughout this call. The challenge is, in my experience, in the last 22 years, I think recruitment's got harder. There's almost too much tech involved in the process. Data's a bit of a mess. Process has taken a back seat in favor of just get stuff done. And so if you put automation in the mix, and for me, weaponize your time with it, smooth out the road, remove things that don't need to be done by a human. And trust me, there is plenty in the recruitment workflow that does not need to be done by a human, that's either been done in a crappy way or not being done at all. And that really affects relationships. So clean up your data, get some automations running that will keep your candidates and clients engaged throughout the recruitment life cycle, crazy suggestions, really educating candidates about why counteroffers are really stupid, as an example, from the get-go. You know, tell them some stories about what's going to happen in this fairy tale that they're in. Weaponize again your time by educating your clients that if they don't engage candidates quickly throughout the cycle. So use automation to really tell stories, weaponize your time, and just make you a more effective recruiter. Then what's left, obviously, is a free day, she says she wishes. Once you get rid of the crap that's preventing best practice in 2022, then all that you have left is a human, a database, and a time, and a piece of time. And then you go, right, how can I best use my time? And it's this bit, it's talking to people, it's really understanding the notion of, if I find somebody for you, how much is that going to add to your bottom line? Or if I find somebody for you, how's that going to help you with your own personal work-life balance? And really asking the questions that I personally am not seeing enough of in the recruitment life cycle. It's, well, if we get somebody, how much are you going to pay them? That for me is too early in the conversation. If we get someone for you, what's it going to do for your business? Write those things down. Remind the client continuously about the difference you're going to make. So in other words, going back to the previous question about how can we get recruiters to pay more respect to themselves and their pipeline, it's ultimately to free themselves up so they can do their jobs really, really well. And automation will help them do that in a way that we never thought possible 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I can see some nods from Carl and Gabby. Carl, if I can come to you next. Again, thinking about automation, how have you been tackling this when dealing with some of your key accounts?
Yeah, so we, over the last 2 or 3 years, ECS have really looked at our automation. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm still a huge fan of picking up the phone and having a real life conversation. But clearly time doesn't always allow. So picking up on what Lisa said there, you know, it's all about, for me, embracing technology. Automation, when I started, was using a fax machine to send a CV. Clearly things have moved on since then. So work smarter. We have 2 or 3 accounts that actually have circa 160 contacts within those 3 accounts. So you can imagine trying to pick up the phone to 160 people on a monthly basis is a bit of a challenge. So we've used automation with technologies such as HubSpot, Interview Me, Alfred, etc. There's plenty of platforms out there. But really, as Josh said at the start of this, to tell a story, you know, tell your clients what you're doing, share the wins, share case studies. You know, they engage with you, they like working with you, so tell them what you're doing in the market, share industry news, you know, just to keep that brand awareness, things that you may not necessarily do over a 5-minute conversation, or if you're lucky enough to, you know, meet a client for lunch. It's just that continued brand awareness. And it doesn't have to be every week, it doesn't have to be every month, but maybe start off with automating some of your comms on a quarterly basis. Again, I'm a strong believer of communicating via video, which we do on a lot of our automated comms. But again, use other content, use images, use text. And I think the 3-4 points for me really on this is celebrate and share success, keep communication relevant, ensure you've got a mix of video, text and images within your plan. And again, as Josh said at the start, just share your story.
I think kind of both points are said there, just add my kind of 2 cents in. For me, it's just the balance, right? It's the balance between the two. If you try and over automate, you're going to lose the bits we really enjoy about this business, which is interacting with people. And if you under automate, you'll find yourself investing a lot of your time in quite kind of menial tasks, you know, keeping up with the wider network and balancing that. And a lot of the people who are on this and joining this and audience to the panel today will probably be thinking, okay, well, I'm very high volume, or I work with very busy, you know, sectors, and I've got lots going on. So how do I find time to really build these immersive client relationships? And how do I find time to kind of work on those bits of business, especially if I don't work with 2 or 3 regular clients? If I work with, you know, 1 client a month, and I don't see them again for 2 years, I've got lots of, how do I balance all of that? Utilizing automation into that, but not fully relying on it, finding that balance, that for me is the key. And if you can use things like Carl suggested, video, images, text, story, to personalize your automation, that's where people really buy into it. And then take that time you free up and invest it in strengthening the relationship, really talking about your product offering, talk about how you engage and differentiate at that level of service. I can automate that service, and that's my contingent, or I can balance that with some more interaction from myself and the professionals in my team, and that starts to lead me in that retained direction. So everything in moderation, I guess, would probably be my takeaway on automation.
Yeah, and we also work in a fast-paced environment as well, don't we? You know, people leave and start new businesses all the time. So it's a great way of ensuring your brand is in front of new joiners within your clients, because, you know, it's near enough impossible unless you spend 12 hours a day on LinkedIn looking at all the starters and leavers to truly, you know, understand who you should be speaking to. So we've certainly found it a great way where, you know, an existing contact has shared our content with a new starter, and then from that, you've got somebody else to speak to within the business.
Yeah, definitely. Just reiterating what everyone said, it means that the time you spend with your clients or your candidates is more quality. You know, you can invest and you can ask, as you were saying, Lisa, those really important and in-depth questions. Automation takes off the side worries, and you can really delve deep and create that meaningful relationship.
Yeah, I think it's funny when we talk about automations as this sort of the new thing, because it's sort of really not. The way we describe a recruitment company to a business owner or a recruiter's desk to a recruiter is that you run a machine. It's an operating model machine, however you want to describe it. And like any machine, you need to pump it with all sorts of different things to make it more efficient, give it more capacity. I want my machine to run 24 hours, 7 days a week, not just when I'm actually in front of it with my laptop open, etc. So on one side, we should be and have been using automation, but maybe not as well as we thought we were, from a point of view of just keeping my machine running and purring as effectively and as long as we possibly can. What's now happening on the other side, which I find fascinating, is that we're now asking recruiters for more results, more outputs, but with less hours. Because we're all out hybrid working. We're now talking about 4-day weeks. Now, next thing you know, it's going to be a one day week, working from anywhere you want to work with your shorts on. Now, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. But the reality is we're working less hours now and expecting more results out of it. That is an impossible task to do unless you're making your machine a 24/7 machine. And the only way to make a 24/7 machine is through a blend of either outsourcing, which a lot of people are doing at the moment, and or automation on top of that. And it's a no-brainer. But again, because the market has demanded more for less, we're now going, oh, we better call it something. Let's call it automation, put a stamp on it, and let's do more of it. As Carl said, it's the same thing as it was an Excel spreadsheet, fax machine. Nothing's changed. The principles are still the same. Yeah. And I love the fact that people now are thinking about efficiency of their desks, efficiency of the task. Now, am I working on a $10 task or a $10,000 task? You know, and where am I spending my time right now? And it's such an important question. The great thing is recruiters are asking themselves of it now. It's not just the managers saying, guys, I think we need to do less and more of this. It's recruiters going, actually, why would I waste my time with you, Mr. or Mrs. Client? Why would I work on that job? Why would I do these repetitive tasks day in and day out when there's a button I can press or do it for me?
I think as well, one of the reasons potentially why so many recruiters are literally on this roller coaster every day. They get on and they spin around, and it's really at speed. They're doing so much, they've not necessarily got the thinking time that the rest of us have got right now to basically preach to them best practice. Best practice often comes from having the time to think about whether or not what I'm doing is working, and having the time to maybe admit that it's not working, being in an environment where you can go, is everyone else feeling that this is a bit crap? Is this how it is? Is this normal? Or maybe even not just, you know, we look at people maybe post 2008 who have had a very different experience of recruitment prior to some of us pre 2008, because of course there was a big shift then, not just in terms of the economy, but in terms of how we use technology, how candidates started going, why do I need to recruit when I've got a job board? Those sorts of things. And I think often because we fill a recruiter's diary with just stuff, constant stuff, the accountability for how they spend their time and how they win work is it's almost like there's no time for that. I don't know how the rest of you feel about that.
Yeah, I think I don't think recruitment's ever been broken. I think it just continuously shifts. You know, I mean recruitment's worked, and it will always keep working, and it will work in different sort of ways. But it's definitely shifting in how we do things, and I think, Lisa, you're spot on with that. And 2008 is an example of that. But it's happening at the moment, right? We're being tested by job boards. Why work with job boards when they're now quadrupling their pricing? So do we need job boards anymore, sort of stuff? And then we start actually looking at the data going, well, half these job boards aren't actually working for us anymore. So why were we spending all this money in the first place? And so it goes on and so it goes on. It's just part of the evolution. And our industry is going to continuously do this for decades. I think we're all excited about it now, because the great thing about this evolution is on the back of the evolution is this incredibly buoyant marketplace where you have to be a complete muppet not to make money right now and do a really good job in recruitment. So if the great thing about it is if you can get all these bits right, and when the marketplace does start to flatline, which ultimately it will do at some stage in this cycle, the great recruiters are ones who are going, well, I've built a machine, I've got automation running, I'm doing proper outreach, my business desk is super, super efficient, and it's highly profitable and highly scalable. And that becomes super exciting, I think.
I think the key thing as well is just from a recruiter's point of view, take small steps, implement something, make sure it works, and then move on, rather than trying to change the world overnight.
Yeah.
And actually, Carl, you've hit the nail on the head there with kind of moving towards our kind of key takeaways from today's session. I'm aware we've only got kind of 5 or 10 minutes left, and I'm keen to leave a few minutes at the end for questions. If I could just ask each of you just to run through kind of, we really want this to be actionable takeaways, things that our attendees and the market can do tomorrow. So Carl, maybe that was yours. I've already taken yours, but yeah, if we could just come round and I guess just reiterate what you think your kind of key takeaway to our attendees and to the market would be today. Carl, is that what you've just said, or would you like to expand on that? I'll give you a fair chance.
I think just everybody, look at 5 clients and look at how you can start automating some communication on a quarterly basis to keep that brand awareness within your sector base.
Yeah, absolutely. In no particular order, Lisa, if I can come to you next for your takeaway.
Takeaway, it's time. Recruitment's a time game. It's an absolute time game. And whatever you can do with tech to give you time so you can look amazing and be awesome and take yourself seriously, then you should do it.
Yeah, absolutely. James, if I can come to you next.
Wow, it's so hard to narrow this down to 1 or 2 takeaways. I think you know me well enough, I can talk for England. So I think I was just trying to write something down there to think about make it really meaningful. I think it's about asking the right questions. Recruiters asking the right questions right now. Asking yourself the question, who am I working with? Why am I working with you? How am I working with you? Is there a better way of working with you? Asking the question, what's your total budget spend this year? What percentage of that do I actually have? And what do I need to do to get more of it? It's asking those questions. And I think, as Lisa mentioned before, is if we go to our customers with confidence, not arrogance, but with confidence, and we can do a much better job when we work properly together, then I think the results and the impact it will have on our industry reputation will be significant, by the way, because conversion ratios are going to go through the roof. I was with a recruiter yesterday, a business yesterday, and they're currently converting 1 in 2 of their roles that they're recruiting. And they're about 60% contingent still, 40% retained, and they're converting 1 in 2 roles. That's bloody exceptional, because they're asking the right questions and they're proud of what they do, and they're using clever tools and processes to make it stand out and different from the norm.
Absolutely. Asking the right questions sounds easy, but transformational. I think we'd all agree. Gabby, could I come to you next?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's sort of been touched on, but it's not being afraid to go to your client and delve a bit deeper, find your key clients, get in with them and see what their actual headaches are, what their issues are, and think about it differently, see what tools you can use. As we all just said, technology's grown massively, automation's there. How can you help them? And then also, as Lisa said, knowing your worth and knowing that you actually do provide a lot of help to them. So going in there with that confidence.
Absolutely, and get yourself into the boardroom rather than the meeting room, as James said, which I think will be a takeaway I'll remember. Josh, if I could come to you, any closing comments from, I guess, from what we've heard today and customers and what we're hearing in the market every day?
Yeah, I think if we're looking for a step that anyone's attended they can walk away from and take whatever you've heard and everything you've heard from kind of Carl, Lisa, James, and Gabby, and wrap it up, and have an actual step you can put forward today is, come away from this and look at your service offering. Look at what you're putting out to the market when you're first engaging with new clients or with your current clients, and think, do I have a clear differentiator between my levels of service? And if I am going to pick one level of service, am I being rewarded for the quality of that service in the way that I like? And if the answer to those is no, or it's lacking, then think about what I'm going to do to be able to productize this. Is it using tech? Is it using automation? Is it getting deeper with that client? And can I demonstrate clearly and confidently to that client the benefits that will come from that deeper relationship? And that is the way I think you'll be able to go out there and either win these new relationships or upgrade your current relationships by showing some of those outcomes. And if you can do one thing to start that, it's look at your offering, make sure it's strong, make sure you're confident with saying about the difference between them, and go out there and get rewarded for the level of work you're putting in. James.
Sorry, I had to have the last word, but it's not true. When we talk about being rewarded, I think this is a really important piece. This, by the way, we often talk about that as in commercial terms with regards to getting paid according to the right margins. One of the most important things at the moment is contractual lock-ins, contractual terms with customers. I want to make that really clear to everybody. If I said to you, basically, look at your top 20 customers, how many of those could walk away tomorrow morning? You would probably find most of them could. So what is so more important than 1 or 2% margin right now is an 18-month bit of paper, 18-month locked-in contract. Because when the market does start to turn, those recruiters who have won those contracts, bits of paper that said, yes, I'm going to hang out with you for X 18 months, will be the winners from this, I can guarantee.
Yeah, absolutely.
The opportunity to build that confidence with that client now is phenomenal, because it really is candidate driven. It's there, but they're relying upon you to provide that service. You start doing that now. When it does begin to settle, as James kind of said, you'll have that relationship, contractual or even just starting to build that relationship, will be so much stronger when they start thinking about who do I want to partner with, be that person they go to first.
Absolutely. And I think that is a great last word to be had, and one that I think will resonate with everyone here today. So we've got a few minutes left. Thank you so much for the comments that have already gone into the chat. If there are any questions, we do have a few minutes now to make sure they are answered. If we don't have time to answer them, or you think of them after today's event, please do feel free to connect with any of us on LinkedIn, drop us an email, and we'll also be sending around the recording to everybody who has attended today. So we'll just wait and see if anybody has got any burning questions in the chat. But
I was going to ask a question, if that's okay, to you guys.
Absolutely.
So I would love to have an example of how someone is currently using Interview to really smash it at the moment. If you've got to give a user example of someone who's using Interview and it's made a significant difference to their business, because we're hearing about it all the time. We're hearing people using Interview and getting a massive return on investment, which is great. It'd be nice to hear you showcase that.
I might hand to Abby and to Gabby and Carl, because obviously they're going to have some first-hand experience of this.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll expand a bit more on what I was talking about before. So yeah, a big one was our client wanted to build a team of 60 for their client services. And so it was a really customer facing role. Originally, it would be about a 5-stage process, take about 2 months for them to hire, because there were so many stakeholders involved. And so what we did was we got with them in the very beginning and worked out what the actual role was. We really defined it well. We worked out who actually were important in making the decisions of hiring. And then we worked with Interview on their hire side. So it was when hire was first being released. So it was a lot of fun for us to learn a new platform. And we asked the candidates to answer 3 questions, as well as complete an assessment. And when they did that, all of the line managers, as well as the HR team, had access to the portal that Interview has, and they were able to watch the videos in their own time. So what we ended up doing is we said, okay, on a Thursday, we'll send through a new batch of candidates for you to look at. And then on a Friday, they would sit there on their lunch break and review it in their own time. And then they would have a team meeting Friday afternoon. They'd go through the pros and cons and then report back to us. We would have interview times for the next week. And like I said, within 10 days of those videos being submitted, candidates were getting offers. And that was such a massive thing. And we built their team quicker than they thought it could. And we also have, it was a contract-based role. And I want to say we're sitting on about 80% conversion from the contract going into permanent roles within the company.
Good.
Great to hear, Gabby. I think for me, if I was to share one, and sorry, did I cut someone off just then? Did I cut you off, Carl?
I was going to share one if we've got time. A similar story, really. We actually interviewed. We were putting a team of 10 service desk analysts together for an MSP on a contract for 3 months, and we took away all of the interview process away from our clients. So we managed to secure 10 offers without the client actually seeing and interviewing these people themselves. We collectively came up with the technical questions. I interviewed the candidates, and then the client actually offered people on the on the basis of the interview that we sent across. So definitely reduce their time to hire 100%.
And what a brilliant demonstration of a client having absolute trust in their agency's partner. Well, I'm about to say supplier then, in their agency partner. When we get to that level, I mean, that is super. That to me demonstrates confidence of a great recruitment business bolted together with a really cool bit of tech. And then actually, that's what recruitment is all about. That's as simple as that.
Yeah, and actually one of the best stories I've heard recently, and for me, it was just such a great thing of a progressional relationship, was actually a client of ours in the Midlands. I won't name names, I've not had this authorized, but they were working with a new business and had pitched for retainer their kind of, premium standard service, and the client pushed back, don't really see the value in that. We have a lot of clients we work with, so, fine. So they engaged contingently, but one of the best candidates they sent over using interview and kind of said, look, this is a great candidate. I thought I'd demonstrate the value in this and where it comes on a retained level. The client kind of came back so impressed with the questions and the way that the recruiter in name had interviewed that candidate and pulled out key information that they then converted that engagement from contingent to retained and upped their fees, paid them a deposit, and continued engagement on future other roles they're working at the moment. And that's a great sign of, even if we don't get that credibility at day one, being able to showcase your talent at day two can often lead to that strengthening relationship and almost that ability to get your credibility straight in front of those clients. Because remember, when they're watching these interviews, video interviews, they're not just seeing the candidate, they're also seeing you. And that is probably one of the best ways to showcase someone new, your talent and skill when it comes to your industry and how you meet with candidates. And that for me was a really positive story recently of somebody creating relationships, utilizing the tools they have at their disposal.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm afraid we are out of time. Goodness, loads of healthy debate today, and I think we probably could have carried on for a few more hours, but we shall let everybody go and have their lunch. A huge thank you to all of the attendees who joined us today. We will send the recording, and a huge thank you to our wonderful panelists, Carl, Lisa, Gabby, James, and to Josh. It's been a wonderful discussion and has certainly left me feeling inspired. It's an exciting time to be in the industry and plenty of food for thought for everybody to take away. So huge thank you, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.